What's up, y'all? Boogie Knight here, and welcome to something a little bit different. Tonight, I'm starting a new playthrough of Dark Souls, namely the Prepare to Die edition. However, this is not going to be just your standard playthrough. I know a lot of people have a tendency to play Souls games for YouTube and or Twitch / Mixer / DLive, whatever. But not many people do lore-based walkthroughs, and that's what I'm going to focus on this series. I've been watching a lot of Vati Vidya and Epic Name Bro videos and how they go into the backstories, possible theories developed by either From Software or by fans and stuff like that. So that's what the focus of this is going to be about. Is I'm going to take more of a hard look at the settings, the things we encounter, the people we encounter. I'll be doing a lot of investigations and a lot of fan theories and my own interpretations on this. I'll also be possibly, as I see things, referencing stuff in Dark Souls 2 and 3. Now, for the sake of disclaimers, this will be a mostly blind playthrough of Dark Souls. I've kind of gotten into the habit of starting it, and because my mouse doesn't disappear and lock in, I get frustrated with the controls on my gamepad. So please be patient with me if I occasionally screw up on the mechanics. And secondly, there's probably not going to be a lot of cheeky sarcasm as runs around in most of my playthroughs. And finally, 3, please respect the fact this is mostly a blind playthrough and I want to explore as much as possible. I talk about as much as possible. I think the Soulsborne series is ripe with backseat gamers. So if I'm doing something incorrect and you want to offer some suggestions, please either just make a kind word in the comments or DM me on here or Twitter or Discord or whatever and just do that. But don't say you need to go here, blah, blah. So this is going to be a little bit slower and whatnot. So with that being said, let's dive right in, shall we? Let's discuss the lore of Dark Souls Prepare to Die. Okay, so first, of course, we're going to just quickly breeze through this. I do have my Skyfire character off camera for just fooling around, so, quick character name. Let's just go ahead and do, you know what, why not? Raven Renegade. After helping the Raven Day conspiracy, Raven's Renegades was kind of an ongoing thing, so special thanks to people under the Raven's Nest who helped me with that. Class, we're always going to be tanking, so let's just go ahead and do the Warrior class. Gift, you can do everything from the Goddess's Blessing, which is Divine Holy Water, Black Fire Bombs, Twin Humanities. I'll go into all this stuff as I see it, but we're going to start off with the Master Key. Physique, yeah, slim. Face, we're going to go with Dubious Karim, but I want to look at some things. We have Commoners, Delta Farmers, Astora Nobles, Dragon Scholars, Thorland Clerics, Jubilant Katarina, Dubious Karim, Classic Xena, Eerie Great Swamp, and Far East Traveler. A lot of the people who the Souls games know about the Katarinas, namely Siegmeyer in this one, Sigurd in Dark Souls 3, also known as the Onion Knights. And then Dubious Karim, which this is the first thing I kind of want to discuss before I get too much into it, is notice the paleness of the skin of this particular character. It could be the sheer fact that maybe since this game took place first in the Dark Souls series, not counting Demon Souls, of course, and in Dark Souls 3, there's a very pale character called Irithyll of the Boreal Valley. So maybe Karim was what later became Irithyll. I don't know, but just something to think about. Hair, wild. Yeah, let's go wild. Let's go Aragorn style, and then color gold. And if you want to do stuff, you can go to the customize menu and change different things around. So let's go ahead and start with Raven Renegade.
In the age of ancients, the world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons. But then there was fire. And with fire came disparity. Heat and cold. Life and death. And of course, light and dark. Then from the dark they came and found the souls of lords within the flame. Nito, the first of the dead. The Witch of Izalith and her daughters of Chaos. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, and his faithful knights. And the furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten. With the strength of lords, they challenged the dragons. Gwyn's mighty bullets peeled apart their stone skins. The witches weaved great firestorms. Nito unleashed a miasma of death and disease. And Seath the Scaleless betrayed his own, and the dragons were no more. Thus began the Age of Fire. But soon the flames will fade, and only dark will remain. Even now, there are only embers. And man sees not light, but only endless nights. And amongst the living are seen carriers of the accursed dark side.
Carriers of the accursed dark sign.
Yes, indeed. The dark sign brands the undead. And in this land, the undead are corralled and led to the north. Where they are locked away to await the end of the world. This is your fate.
And thus, the journey begins in the Northern Undead Asylum. Just the backstory alone involving the undead being led here to the north? It's a fascinating theory. Are all undead branded with the dark sign and thus led to the north? Or do only certain undead carry the accursed dark sign? Now you can already look at Raven Renegade and see they are already well on their way to becoming hollow, or in which case losing their sanity. Since the undead don't die permanently, each time they come back they lose a little bit more of their will, their self, and thus go insane or become hollow. Now, Raven Renegade is fortunate enough that this character that we saw drop the dead body onto the ground with a key on it. We'll go talking about that in just a few minutes, but for starters, let's go ahead and look at our inventory and see what we have. Start with the black separation crystal. This black crystal, long a symbol of farewell, is granted to banished undead. The crystal sends phantoms back to their homes, or sends you back to yours. Beware of fickle use of this item if you intend to nurture relations. And then we have the dreaded dark sign. The dark sign signifies an accursed undead. Those branded with it are reborn after death, but will one day lose their mind and go hollow. Death triggers the dark sign, which returns its bearer to the last bonfire rested at, but at the cost of all humanity and souls. According to some lore, which you can see throughout playing the course of this game, undead will get souls in some frantic or maybe even desperate method to keep their sanity, and it's actually referenced in Dark Souls 2. Most particularly with Lucatiel of Mira. Sorry, getting the mouse out of the way. How if you don't use her in boss fights, she starts mourning the fact she will eventually go hollow. So just something to think about. Then we have the dungeon cell key. Key to the dungeon of the Undead Asylum to the north. A mysterious knight without saying a word shoved a corpse down into the cell, and on its person was this key. Who was this knight, and what was his purpose? There may be no answers, but one must still forge ahead. We'll talk about him in just a few minutes, but for now, let's get out of the cell and into the Northern Undead Asylum. Since this is known as the Northern Undead Asylum, were there other asylums to corral the undead? You can see this poor guy in here, fully hollowed and losing everything. These are just mainly instructional notes. You can see another one in there. And then we've got this guy here, crying, fully hollow. Look at them. Let's go ahead and put him out of his misery. There's our first soul. Or not. There we go. Now we look over here, not at this corpse right there, but this thing on patrol. This is one of at least 2 asylum demons in this particular asylum. Quite possibly jailers, or maybe even more to it. And this is interesting that this is a hollow that had been killed and thrown through this grate thing. Yet they did not come back to life. So maybe there is permadeath eventually as hollow, even though it's not alluded to. There we go. So now we have a few souls to add to our collection. Let's proceed on our journey through the Northern Undead Asylum. Got another undead down here. Let's go ahead and... Killing these guys is completely optional, but it's a good way to eventually farm souls. And I actually want to point something out on our next hollow we run into. Possibly. I might have just noted it. So as we climb up here and out of this cell, we'll come to a familiar sight to any Dark Souls players. And that is the bonfire. Bonfires are places to rest, save, level up, reverse hollowing. It's pretty much the go-to for anything. So once you find a bonfire, make sure you don't just light it, but note it well. And as I open this door, I want to show something really quickly that I discovered off camera. Take a couple steps back and not trigger this. up there, you have a glimpse at our first boss fight, the Undead Asylum Demon. We'll worry about him in a little bit, because right now we need to run. You can trigger the boss fight if you really want and fight him, but I highly advise it because you'll probably get killed. If you do manage to kill him... Well, okay, we'll go ahead and shout that. I'm trying to... There we go, one hand. So we will get our shield eventually. And look at our character in a little more detail. How he's the blue lips already on the way of going hollow. We have another bonfire. Now, unlike in later Dark Souls games where you can warp between bonfires immediately, in this game you can only warp between bonfires after you've accomplished a certain task, which of course we will get into many episodes later. We're going to go ahead and go over here, grab our heater shield. Now we can successfully parry items. So this is, of course, how we can tell how much damage we're doing, physical attacks, deflection. Yeah, okay, so we are good to go with that. And now we can also block, parry, and eventually riposte. But this is interesting because this undead hollow creature is just apparently sane enough to be able to wield a bow and arrow. We haven't quite seen that in the other hollows in this game so far. But now we have our longsword. So now we can actually get some damage done, starting with him. It's curious to see how different types of hollow have different levels of hollowness to them. Like the ones we saw down there and these weapon-wielding ones that just almost seem to be feral. And now we go through our first fog wall and into the courtyard. Down below we have the first bonfire we ran into. And over here, through this door, we can see the knight who dropped the corpse into our cell and thus freed us. Now, we can't reach this item just yet. We will be able to at a later time, because we do have the opportunity to scour this place fully. The thing we want to do first and foremost is talk to this knight. That apparently looks like he's not faring so well. And any player can read these messages, but once again, that's just kind of how we, that's the tutorials. But to each their own. So to get through this gate, through this wall, we gotta go up here, and that will trigger a gigantic ball. Since the game was pretty much destroyed, we have no way of accessing it from there. And here is the nameless knight.
Oh, you. You're no hollow. Thank goodness. I'm done for, I'm afraid. I'll die soon, then lose my sanity. I wish to ask something of you. You and I were both undead. Hear me out, will you?
Of course we want to say yes, but this is something that I find very fascinating. Is he says that he knows as an undead he will die soon and become hollow. So does that mean that all undead know exactly when they go hollow? Can they sense it? Or is it just something they're predicting? If they die, what happens when they come back? So of course let's hear him out.
Regrettably, I have failed in my mission. But perhaps you can keep the torch lit. There is an old saying in my family. Thou who art undead art chosen, and thine exodus from the Undead Asylum maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringeth the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know. Well, now you know. And I can die with hope in my heart. Oh, one more thing. Here, take this. An Estus flask. An undead favorite.
And we're introduced to our Estus flask, which is our source of healing throughout the course of the game.
Oh, and this.
Undead Asylum F2 East Key.
Now I must bid farewell. I would hate to harm you after death. So go now. and thank you.
Let's see, does he have anything else to say?
Now I must bid farewell, and thank.
Now, while this main character is known only as the nameless Asylum Knight or something of that equivalent, there was some cut content for reasons I'm not sure why. And this character is known as Oscar of Astora. I'm not sure why there was some cut, but from a data dump that I saw, there's a sign of him dying. Little is known about that. And now we use the key, and we're back in the courtyard. So we can go back to the bonfire at our leisure. Which we should probably do to be on the safe side. So, what was Oscar's purpose? Was he one of the guards here? Was kind of a test of will to guard the undead? Was he branded with the dark side? It says in his family's saying is that he wanted to go to the land of ancient lords and ring the bell of awakening for some purpose. So what led him to the asylum instead? There's just something interesting about how he wound up here as opposed to the land of ancient lords. And we'll talk more about this Undead Asylum in a few minutes. First, we have to kite this guy out. Practice my swinging. Let's go ahead and get my stamina back up just a moment. There we go. Double down. Now we have another hollow over here I want to quickly deal with. Actually, two more hollows I want to deal with. There we go. And another one. This is a good way to work on our backstab and parries, both of which I am absolutely important with. Let's get a circle strafe in here. Get that back up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so this is one of those, like most hollow, they tend to attack in waves of 3. Just a little something. I don't know if that's true or not, but I remember in my days of playing Dark Souls, that seems to be the going rate. Now, before we go through the fog wall, just want to look at the atmosphere over here. We're completely surrounded by mountains and clouds. The Undead Asylum is in the peak and pinnacle of isolation, where undead are left to rot until the end of time, as it said so in the introduction. Just something to think about. How far north from the realm is this Undead Asylum? How close is it? And who led the undead to this asylum? Was it Gwyn? Was it Gwyn's descendants? It isn't really explained how or why, but I think that's the beauty of From Software, is their element of ambiguity. Now I do want to look at this message really quickly. So it is the right bumper to do the plunging attack. And that is very good for when we take on the boss fight. The demon. And I completely screwed that up. That's okay. We'll probably lose this one out of the gate. That's okay. Let's go ahead and mess this up. I probably did the plunge attack too early. That's okay. Get away from the stompy attack. The plunge attack, from what I've gathered, deals probably about 50% damage, but... Okay, I was definitely caught in the wave on that one, and that's okay. Let's go ahead and mess this up. That's looking like. And we missed that entirely. A couple of quick swings in there. I was able to dodge that, but apparently I didn't. Just dodging into him instead of rolling away. Don't mess this up. Got him. And we have our look at the first boss fight. We received the big Pilgrim Key as a result, as well as our first dose of humanity. I can still hear another demon sauntering around, and that is the demon down in the catacombs, or the basement, or whatever it is. Now, before we leave the asylum and move to our next destination, let's look at the big Pilgrim Key and the Estus Flask. The undead treasure these dull green flasks. Fill with Estus at a bonfire and fills HP. The Estus flasks are linked to the Fire Keepers. The Dark Tales also make reference. An emerald flask from the Keeper's soul. She lives to protect the flame and dies to protect it further. So as we find Fire Keepers' souls, that is what gives us the power to get more uses of Estus throughout the course of the game. So how are the Fire Keepers found? How are they channeled? How do they become that? How are they called? Something to think about and something for me to look at. And humanity. Rare tiny black sprites found on corpses. Used to gain 1 humanity and restore a large amount of HP. This black sprite is called humanity, but little is known about its true nature. If the soul is the source of all life, then what distinguishes the humanity we hold within ourselves? I forgot, I want to look at Big Pilgrim's Key. Key to the inner door of the Undead Asylum main hall. Big key belonging to a chosen undead pilgrim, but this chosen undead knows not what this pilgrimage has in store. So this brings up a theory regarding the Undead Asylum demon, that it's not just a jailer, but a rite of passage to call the wheat from the chaff, as it were. Or in this case, a chosen undead whose purpose is unsure, and all the other hollow undead. Or maybe even just undead branded with the dark sign. But even so, Big Pilgrim's Key only leads us out to this courtyard. There is no way to go, and we have no earthly idea where it takes us, except by proceeding onward and upward. The endless journey of an undead. And what I find fascinating about this is if all undead go hollow eventually, after dying 1, 2, multiple times, why does our character never go fully hollow and insane? Why is that the case? It's not really mentioned in the course of this game, or any game for that matter. So I'd find whatever theories you all have, please let me know. But of course, we're done here with this area, and we're on to the next part of our journey.
Only in the ancient legends it is stated that one day an undead shall be chosen. To leave the Undead Asylum in pilgrimage to the land of the ancient lords. Lorethrough.
And thus, we come to our hub world, Firelink Shrine. much like Majula in Dark Souls 2 and, of course, Firelink Shrine in Dark Souls 3. And this is where the game really begins. But this is also a perfect area to end tonight's session. We've gotten through one world, and we've entered a new one, and we'll continue on in the next one. So, of course, I would love to hear your theories on the Undead Asylum, the Undead, the Dark Sign, and things like that. And I look forward to picking back up with you on the next episode. So, of course, before I call it a night, if you like the Boogie Night project and you want to find out more, of course I have a Twitter page and a public Discord channel, and links to both of those are in the description below, as well as a link to my temporarily down Twitch page, and of course my Patreon account if you are so inclined. So otherwise, I hope y'all have a fantastic evening, and I'll catch you on the flip side, alright? Peace.